Artwork, critiques, Photoshop files, and reference sheets are all available on my Patreon.
Well, hello there guys and girls, my name's Mikey, welcome back to my room. It's time for another tutorial, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to draw giant ladies for your anime and manga characters. Now, I'm not just talking about 6-foot Amazonian types, I mean full-on stage 1 giants for anime and manga, which is a term I'm making up. I'm not talking about IRL gigantism, I'm talking about a non-human character who's closer to 8 to 10 feet tall. And by stage 1, what I'm saying is that they're too big to be human, but just small enough that if they were to bend over and shimmy sideways a little bit, they could still technically fit through the door to a normal house. And then say a stage 2 giant would be too big to get into your home at all. So if you guys are following along at home, I just have a number of sheets of cheap printer paper down for a good surface, a super cheap disposable mechanical pencil, and I'm also going to be grabbing a ruler just to help me guide the proportions. Now, when we draw standard anime and manga ladies, we could have like a dumpy girl who's about 6 head heights tall, or a statuesque character who's closer to maybe 8 head heights tall, but we're actually going to be going for 9 head heights for a giant character. The reason why we're not just drawing a normal female and scaling her up is because we want this to be a slightly different creature that is readable and relatively believable as well, which means a different head to body ratio. And also we're going to focus on big, strong, powerful legs, a good muscular angular form, which is going to just help read the idea that this character is actually strong enough to take their own weight, and also it's going to make for a very domineering and alluring woman depending on your tastes. So I'm just marking 2 centimeters down the edge of either side as a bit of a loose guide. I'm not going to worry about every single one, but I will just put in a single line here for our head heights because I'll draw a couple of characters side by side, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 down, and this is just going to help me understand the middle of the character, the lower part of where the hips will sit, and then I'm just going to pop this line in at the bottom as well for where the feet drop to. This does not need to be perfect, but this is just going to help guide my decision making as well. So I'm going to grab a scrap of paper just so that my hand sits relatively nicely on the page without messing anything up, and I'm going to work very loosely, relatively firmly so that you guys can see what's going on, but also I'm going to work with some harder angles than normal and think about bigger shapes. So let's start off with the head of our character. I'll give it a little bit of tilt, and I'm just going to very lightly and tentatively pop in a circular shape around about here, but I'm going to put in a center line, and I'm just going to drop this down, sweeping into a long, effeminate curve point towards the chin. And I'm trying to think about these effeminate areas wherever I can, because when we're drawing a super big, strong giant lady, there's going to be lots of slightly more domineering masculine feeling elements as well. So we do need to balance it out. So let's say that's our head shape. I'm just going to put in a cross line up here for the brow. Let's say the rest of the features sit just below that line, and then maybe just a little ear shape on either side down here to make this feel like a head. And then I'm just going to drop a bit of a column down here for the neck, and then I can kind of work down the page. Now, I often like to do my angles contrapposto, but I'm going to have a fairly firm and solid base feeling for our character. The stance will be relatively wide and they're going to be relatively big. And also, I'm going to be putting this together as if our viewpoint is somewhere down here. It won't be much, but we're going to feel like that we're ever so slightly looking up towards these characters, which is why the brow seems a bit higher. We're seeing a bit more of a lower part of the face. Now, a bit which is fairly traditional is I'm going to put in a shoulder line somewhere along here for this character, and I'm just going to firm that up so that it shows hopefully nice and clearly for you guys. And I'm going to pop in a hip as well, and I'm just going to give this hip a good bit of tilt so that one leg can go down and one leg can go out a little bit. And instead of just drawing ovals for the cavity area of the chest and then for the hips, I'm going to be thinking about the similar forms, but straight lines. I'm going to be doing a kind of trapezium shape, very roughly, very loosely. I'm going to do this. I'm going to drop down here for a kind of trapezoid and then sweep in here something like so. And I am still thinking about the oval of the chest. It's still in here, but I'm working with some more firmer masculine shapes because I want to think about the overall large form areas for such a large character. So another trapezoid kind of coming up here as well. I'm just going to come up there and then swing out here like so. And again, you can imagine the other oval for the bucket area of the hips. And then I am going to just bring in that curve of what would be the under part of the rib cage, just so that I know that I've got this nice low angle reaching up to the top there. Just going to stroke that line in. And then I might just have the back of the neck muscles coming down on either side towards where we'll have some fairly generous guide circles again for the shoulders, just fitting inside of this trapezoid shape. Then I'm going to think about a front line that's going to come down the front of the tummy, down to the bottom of the torso. But then we're going to look at this big, firm, powerful base we'll need for the legs. So if I'm going to draw one line from just inside the hip that comes down at a slight angle, just coming in here, just to give it some interest. And then another line coming out from here that's going right off to the left. Then I can start to think about where the knees are going to sit. That's going to be 1, 2, 3 up, just around about the top of this line here. And I'm going to draw in 2 very light, but very generously sized circles. One here and one here. And now I'm going to bring in the shapes of these legs. And again, working with these big, firm shapes this time, which will then curve out in a minute for the different muscle groups. Now, firstly, let's get the meat of the top part of the leg with the quadriceps. I'm just imagining a cylinder, but it's actually going to be coming out very, very largely from just up here. I'm going to put a quick guide triangular sweep here and here into the bottom part of the torso, just to help me understand how these legs are going to sweep in. It's just creating a big arrow down to the privates with the center line. And the thickest part of this kind of column that I'm putting in here is going to be just below the bottom of the torso. So I'm going to just come out to about there. I'm just going to be really wide of it now, and I can always pull it back later. And then just sweep down there to the knee, and then turn those 2 jagged angles just into a bit more of a curve as I guide my way through. I've gone right past this knee, keeping this area nice and wide, and now I'm just going to sweep back up and in just past the middle here. And then as we come down to the front of the knee, I'm just going to put a little box shape over here and guide myself just inside now. This knee is pointing a bit off to the left, so the shin bone's going to be just within here, and I'm going to sweep down like so towards the last head height, which is where I'm going to stop it. A circle for where we're going to have the ankle business going on, and then I'm going to come back up here with a relatively thick column shape, and now I'm going to sweep that out from this point all the way up to a really big protruding calf muscle. Now that's still going to be, if you imagine, a upside down teardrop shape that goes right round the back part of that circle. So we sweep down, curve out, and then come in and around like so. I'm going to sweep right in before bringing that curve just in the other way to curve down the back of the leg like so. And then we've got our foot shape in here. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of the heel as a kind of rounded shape off here. The rest of the foot itself is going to sweep down like so. We'll put this character in heels, and then the front part of the balls of the foot and toes just popping off like so. Let's get a little heel shape in here. And as ever, I do apologize if this comes across a bit rough. I'm always trying to make these tutorials as quick as possible for you guys. Ankle circle just in there, which means the characters might not be finest masterpieces, but it's all about the larger scale ideas at the moment for your own giant characters. Now sweeping back up the front of the shin bone, which is what we've got here from our guideline, I'm just going to curve up a little bit here, just seeing the meat of the back of the calf a little bit from the other side. Here's our big, strong knee area doing its work in there. We're coming back up this line, and I'm just going to meet that into the hips, and I'm just going to curve the bone of the hip round a little bit up here. We're building up this structure on top of our guidelines here, and then let's go down this leg as well and take a look. Also, just going to fill that gap a little bit there, and we're still going to build on in just a quick sec. So another big thick leg. This one's a little bit more towards us, so I'm still thinking about these very generous shapes, but this one is going to probably come down to around about here, just like so. Then cut across the top of our big knee circle and still be thickest around about this point. So I'm going to sweep up and around right out and past the edge of our hips, and then bring that curve all the way back in. A little bit wider at the top than halfway, so that this line is curving nicely here. Slowly that curve becomes a bit more shallow as we make our way down to the knee. Again, I'm now putting a box over the knee area, just inside of all of this, and following the weight line. So I'm following now the shin coming right down the front to around about here, where it stops and drops into the foot. Relatively thick, cylindrical shape that we're looking at side on, just making its way down here. And then I'm going to think about this kind of teardrop shape again. I'm going to curve a little bit, this upside down teardrop I keep needing to say. I'm going to curve a little bit out here for the inside edge of the calf. This is not such a prominent line, so I'm just going to sweep this one back in. But on the outside edge, it's going to bulge a bit more firmly and a slightly bit higher up as well. So I'm going to just bring that out and around like so, just coming out here, then popping right back in, and then coming back down the rest of the leg, making this relatively nice and thick as well. Big bones to take all of this weight. Ankle bone's going to be a little bit higher on the inside than it is on the outside edge. That's why you always twist your foot inside. And then we're just going to sweep down a relatively straight on foot shape. So again, looking towards us, a little bit of heel just showing off around the edge. And then we've just got the front ball area of the foot shape doing all of its stuff here. Maybe we're going to catch a bit of the heel as it disappears down there. So let's take a look at the quadriceps. Now, you don't need to know your full anatomy to get your head around all of the musculature of the leg, but if we're going to be drawing giant characters who are big and strong and carrying their own weight, we're going to start to dive in and split these muscle groups a little bit. So what I'm going to do is start off with this knee, and I know that on the inside edge, we're going to have this bulging teardrop muscle shape. It's going to drop right down here, fill up a lot of space, and then the tear is just going to walk all the way up to the hip flexors. So I'm just going to create a curve here, relatively firm line on the knee side of things. I'm going to have that just defined and then sweep up, and I'm not going to draw all the way to the top, but I'm certainly going to define it as it goes up there and then sweep around up here as well. And then also on this side, we've got the side area of the knee here. So I'm also going to put a bit of structure here, just to find that the side is happening there, sweeping up inside the back towards the legs and then up and around like so. And then on this side of the knee, also another relatively straight line here, just showing that we've got another area here. So this is going to be the Vastus Medialis. It's like the inside part of a quadricep. Then we've got the Lateralis, the outside part. Don't worry about that. It's just a great big muscle that's coming back around here, and it just splits. There's another one somewhere in here just doing something as well. Don't stress too much. Up around the shin area, around the back of the calf, I'm just going to describe where this muscle is protruding out further just by changing the shape of that curve there as it comes all the way down. And on the front side, similar thing, but just a bit more towards us. So big bulging muscle on the inside edge, which curves around the top part of the knee in a relatively firm line, but I'm curving it like a big kind of teardrop shape and sweeping that up towards the hip flexors somewhere around here, which means on the interior side just up here, we've just got this line curving up and then around towards the middle. Just before it hits the top, it's curving right back in. And then again, I'm just going to imagine that just coming up there, then a slightly flatter line somewhere around about here to be the muscle that curves right round and gives us that nice profile. And then I'm just going to bring this square back into slightly more of an elliptical shape for the knee. We've got all of this structure coming in on the inside edge, which is going to sweep down towards the front of the shin like so. Structure coming in on this edge as well, just bringing that in here. And then I'm just firming up where we've got a little bit of calf on that side all the way down. And then just coming up here to show where we've got, again, the front part of the leg, but the big meaty calves coming in around the back, just like so. And then things would, again, just split around about there, but we don't need to worry too much about that area. So now that we've just got all of these big firm leg shapes out of the way, thanks for following along, let's just pop back up here really quickly and just kind of get the rest of this body in. We can keep things relatively simple at the top. The legs need to carry all this extra tall, extra gigantic weight, but it's up to you how big and muscular and strong you make these characters. I will draw some variations and I will make one very, very curvy for your enjoyment. And then we're going to have an arm just drop down here. This is just going to go and disappear down the back. So I'm just going to do the old classics, which is a relatively straight line, meeting a circle, which is going to be our joint area, and then another cylinder that starts off a little bit thicker at the top, slowly thins out, hand disappears. Then we've got the chest area up here, so there's going to be a little bit of surface curve as it meets into the shoulder. I'm going to define that shoulder shape just a little bit more by teardropping it down outside. Then I'm going to curve round in of this chest cavity. Everything's going to meet in a little bit more as it does in the middle. Coming back round this hip as well, swinging this hip shape right onto the inside edge here before we come back up and around, getting a bit of the lateral muscles from this side. And then this arm, we'll just pop a hand down here. So this is just, a fist resting on the side of the body. Now this isn't going to be a particularly good one, so this is the fingers just curling up around the back. I don't have this hand too super large because this is a female giant, so I still want to have these kind of effeminate relationships of the ratio of the forms, the hand size to head size and so on. And it's going to be a bent arm, so I just need to make sure a bent arm sideways on is relatively equal in length for the forearm and the top of the arm. So I'm going to go for something like this. Should be a relatively equilateral triangle kind of shape. Let's get a little circle in for where the elbow is going to be, and then I'm just sweeping in. I'm going to give that relatively generous forearm curving shape up there, and then obviously we've got this shoulder coming up a little bit more like so. So let's bring in another arm just down here. I'm still thinking about these basic shapes, but just drawing straight into a few of these alternative curves. A little bit of the back muscles that sweep up are going to just protrude there. The side line down to the front is here. The bottom line for our shoulder blades would be around about here. But again, remember, we're looking up towards this character. So if I'm going to be very generous and give her giant chest proportions, these are going to appear to sit relatively high on the chest as well. So I'm just going to come in around about here and just give her a very generous curve. Just going to sweep one boob right across here. Now, this is completely up to you. This is like an added bonus. So you don't need to add this as long as you're still thinking about the overall solidarity of your giant character in these big square forms, which make them feel really firm in terms of the semiotics. And then I'm just going to get another big curve up here because I do want these giants to be incredibly feminine feeling, even though they are also incredibly gigantic. So let's just sweep another shape up here. I'm just trying to get a similar amount of mass across both boobs, just like so, and just like so. Sweep that curve in. I will tighten up all of these shapes and forms in a minute when we drop into some time lapse. And then down the front as well, I'm still imagining that we've got this tummy area where the curve is going to stop around about here, so we can kind of go in and go down there. And then we've got obviously everything else connecting down at the bucket of the hips, right down the front, down there. So there we've got ourselves a character who is incredibly tall, 9 head heights in height. A normal human being, if this is going to be, say, 9'6", I'm plucking that figure straight out of thin air, I promise. If this is a 9'6" Lady Dimitrescu character, and another normal person is going to be closer to the 6 foot mark, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So another human being might actually come up to their head height right around about here, which is going to be fantastic. So what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to give you another couple examples. I'm going to focus on these legs. So I'm going to draw another giant character, maybe just a touch slimmer this time. Maybe could wear a ball gown and fit a different feeling. And then I'm going to give you an example where I'm going to push these curves even further to give you that giant feel. And I'll see you guys right at the end. Hey there guys, and welcome back. So what I'm going to do is scan in this image and add it to my tutorials reference pack. So if you'd like to grab a copy of this to use with your own work, along with all of the other bits we've done in the tutorials, you can grab the entire set for just $1 on Patreon, links below. And that's how I'm able to keep making everything for free here on YouTube. So thank you very much for the support, but I'd much rather make only free videos because I want you guys to have a go at this without any barriers. So what's going on? Well, with this gigantic lady and this very small head to body ratio, in order to give the sense of grand mass going on, I've made sure that we really kept things thick, strong and heavy around the legs. I've even made sure this particular stance is relatively wide at the bottom, relatively nicely set, and because of that I actually defined up my guiding shapes with more trapezoids this time, just strong hard lines and hard angles, a lot of what I do for male characters, and really then slowly brought in the curves of the musculature again. I've got this leg coming out, so the bulge of the quadriceps going over the top of the kneecap, then the line of the shin is just a little bit further back and in so that I can get this really pronounced calf muscle coming in. I want to show how it kind of maps against the center part of the leg, how we've got these side zones that all wrap up and create all of this construction around there without going overly detailed, but making sure I have that muscle bulge clearly defined above each knee. Then if we have a go of a character who again is a giant with giant proportions, but maybe a bit more Lady Dimitrescu as an example, I'm still keeping these curves a lot more effeminate. I'm still sweeping down the calf and so on, just coming all the way around with these more gentle curves, but still I've actually kept things fairly thick, even around the thinnest point of the ankle. This is a very thick leg to take all of that weight, even if on top I'm keeping things in terms of the overall relationship still relatively slim for the arms. They are for a giant very big limbs. And of course the other option is to just really push those curves. I actually had to hold myself back from making the chest area even bigger to really kick it off, and I didn't, simply because I wouldn't be able to show you any of the construction behind it. But again, we can start to have these very muscular wild giant ladies with these big kind of bulging kind of deltoids, biceps, muscles around the arms slowly getting defined as everything meets in. We've got these big thick triceps squeezing out here, and again I'm just going really all over the place with these big curves. The hips are popping out, the maximum width of the muscles around the legs are just really going out there, just so I can curve all the way around and come in and then curve again to really just kick off this relationship. I'm thinking about the profile sweeping in and out and in, just so that your eye line just really gets filled up with all of this movement and motion, just following the musculature of the body as it makes its way down. And then I just drew in little Mr. Dude McPerson down here, because if these ladies are around about 10 foot tall, then a 6 foot tall average male character is going to be somewhere down here. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. I really hope you found this tutorial to be a little bit useful if you want to draw your own giant ladies for anime and manga. Let me know in the comments section what we're going to be learning next. And it goes without saying, if you haven't clicked that subscribe button already, how do you expect to keep up with all of my tutorials? So I hope you guys have a great weekend, including some of the higher tier January patrons: Isn't It Romantic, Say No Black, Silent Lumberjack, Mumbles45, Dan, Nathan, Jai, Traylon B, Mike T, and Homongchi L. All of you lovely people take care, and I'll see you next time.